Okay, so I've just had one of these moments where I've spent quite a few takes recording this video and then realised my microphone was over the other side of the room. So let's start again. What I want to talk about is atheist movement, something that I've been critical of in the past. Not critical of the idea of an atheist movement, but perhaps critical of some of the things that they tend to get involved in, some of their remits, etc. So what I want to look at is the issue of diversity within atheist movement, some of the things that I don't think that they should be involved in, and then look at what I think they should be involved in. First, what I want to make clear is that I'm talking about atheist movements. I'm not talking about skeptic societies, which tend to have their own agendas and limits. They often don't actually want to get involved in the issue of religion, which is their right. And then you've got secularist movements and you've got humanist movements. Of course, an atheist movement is a secular movement, but that doesn't mean that a secular movement is an atheist movement. You can be a person of religion and still understand the benefits of a secular society and campaign for a secular society because you perhaps don't want to impose your religion on other people, or you don't want other religions imposing themselves on you. Likewise, humanism, although that's closely allied for many people with atheism, what a humanist is, it's somebody who draws their morals from your human judgment, not from some divine command or from scripture. Most religious people do get their morals or claim to get their morals from those things, but some religious people don't. They say, well, God has given us a moral compass and I'm going to use that moral compass, not scripture, not divine command. I'm going to use that moral God-given compass to find my moral place in the world. So they're humanists in the same way, or at least it has the same end result, even if they don't think about it in quite the same way. So you can have religious humanists as well. So those different organisations, skeptics, secular organisations, humanist organisations, they will have their own remits that will include some things that an atheist organisation wouldn't. Likewise, an atheist organisation may include things that they won't. I want to be very specific about that. On the issue of diversity then, I think that's an important issue. I think it's very important to try and reach out to groups perhaps that have traditionally have a very strong religious perspective and where it's perhaps harder to break out of your religion, and to make sure that those groups are represented and feel welcome within atheist movements. And that may well mean, if you can make sure that you don't reduce the quality, if you're going to get rid of a lot of very, very good speakers and have poor speakers to fulfill some of these quotas that you've set, I don't think that's the right way forwards. But if you can maintain a high standard of speaker and yet have a more diverse speaker base, then I think that's a thing that's very well worth doing. And it's very well worth making sure that people feel that they are welcome and engaged regardless of the colour of their skin or their sexuality or their sex, blah de blah de blah. I'm absolutely on board with all of that. But what about the issue of political persuasion? This seems to have been pushed to one side, in fact worse than pushed to one side. There is a contingent, it seems, within the American atheist movement that actually wants to narrow the political focus, to actually narrow the diversity. And I don't know what you people think that represents you, okay, but I know what I think represents me, or what I want to represent me, what I want to be valued for, and it isn't the colour of my skin or my sexuality or my age or my gender or any of these fucking things. It is my opinions and my beliefs. It's what I stand for. It's the material that I put out on YouTube, and it's also my political standpoint on things. They're the things that I want to represent me, not these fucking physical characteristics. So if there's one kind of diversity that I value above any other kind of diversity, it's diversity of opinion. And yet it seems for some people within the atheist movement, that's the one kind of diversity they really don't value. In fact, worse than that, it's the one kind of diversity that they actively want to get away from. And they want to create this idea that atheism is, or left-wing politics is naturally the atheist position. And what they'll sometimes do is they'll cite American society and say, well, there seems to be a natural correlation. That is really, really lazy on their part. When you have somebody like Greta Christina criticising Sam Harris, who she thought had made a similar argument with regard to women and atheism, and said, Sam, if you look beyond the borders of the United States, you'd see that wasn't the case. Well, that wasn't actually the argument that Sam had made, but Greta had a legitimate point there, that the percentage mix is different outside of the United States. But why not look outside of the United States then when it comes to politics as well? If you have a look at the British Social Attitude Survey number 28, I think that's 2010, could be wrong on that, I think it's 2010, of people with no religion who voted Conservative, 44% of their vote, of the right-wing party's vote, was people with no religion. The Labour Party, the major left-wing party, 46% of their vote was people of no religion. 44% versus 46%. You can hardly get a cigarette paper between those two figures. There is not the same bias that there is in American politics. I'm told by my colleagues in other parts of Europe, the situation is similar there. You don't have this situation where religion gets tied in to right-wing politics. So why aren't those same people in America who are saying, let's challenge all these preconceptions and these diversity barriers to atheism, or these barriers to atheism in terms of diversity, why aren't they challenging the political diversity barrier that marries right-wing politics with religion and left-wing politics with atheism? Why are they actually trying to make it worse? Why are they actually trying to harden the position if what they want to make atheist movements about is things that are relevant to atheism rather than relevant to left-wing politics? So what I would like to see, by all means, try and get more diverse podiums, more diverse lists of speakers, more diverse representation amongst people who come to these conferences and gatherings, but do the same thing with regard to politics. If you can get some equally good right-wing speakers, get some equally good right-wing speakers up on stage. If you can get some good politically central speakers, get some good politically central speakers. If you can encourage them to attend these conferences and to join movements, then do so. Show them atheism is inclusive. That issue of inclusion brings me on to the next thing, which is some of the things that atheism tries to get involved in that it shouldn't. There are some things that lie outside of atheism that I think it's fine for atheist movements to get involved in, even if they're not directly linked. A typical example would be in the UK and abortion. There's such a strong link between not having a religion and being pro-choice that I think it's fairly uncontroversial that you are representative of your membership if you then bring that on board as part of one of the things that you're going to champion. But if you're in a country where it might be more controversial, where there might be a substantial number of atheists who are pro-life, then I don't think that that's something that you should champion under the auspices of an atheist movement. Perhaps under a general secular movement or a humanist movement, absolutely, and those are causes that I would champion personally, but perhaps not under the banner of atheism. Then there are other things like gay rights, which I think are very, very problematic to champion for an atheist movement, and I'll sort of explain why. Even if, like me, you're on board with both those things, with championing atheism, with championing gay rights, and you'd like to see both of those promoted in society to a point where they're not issues anymore. If you have a populace with a substantial number of people with negative feelings towards both of those things, then what do you gain by conflating the two? Those people that are on board with both those things anyway, you're not gaining them on board in any kind of a way because they're already on board with both those things. But there will be a number of people who are perhaps, let's say for example, they're wavering. For religious reasons, they have been homophobic in the past, but they're wavering on that. Some of the arguments are working on them and they are gradually softening their approach. And then you tell them that The atheist position is the gay rights position, or the gay rights position is the atheist position. What are you going to do if not harden their hearts? That's the last thing that they need to be hearing, because they have such a negative idea of what atheism is about. Isn't it best that you take these two things, keep them separate, and sell them separately? So where you fail to sell one, you don't bring the other one down with it. That's my kind of perspective on that. I think it's a very, very dangerous thing to do. And that was a point that I made with regard to Atheism Plus. So what should atheist organisations be about? I promised that I would tell you that, and I haven't really done that yet. I think there are three things that an atheist movement has to do, specifically in a country that needs an atheist movement. The first is to give atheists support, individual atheist support. That could be because by coming out as an atheist, they're going to get at best antipathy or perhaps outright animosity from the people around them. They're not going to have the support structures that they had previously, and they might be outcast by friends and family. They might need an organisation that will provide them with some support. They also might need some psychological support. For some reason, for some people, concepts of the afterlife, or the idea that there's this God looking after you throughout your life, is very comforting to people. To suddenly start to realise that perhaps that isn't the case and we're on our own, it's perhaps quite frightening for some people. If you're like me and you've lived with that your entire life, you don't think anything of it. But I know for some people, that's a really fucking scary thing. And I think atheist movements should provide that support to people. That's a very worthwhile thing to do. That moves on to the second thing, really, which is that atheist movements need to look at those issues that are issues for atheists, particular atheists in general throughout their society. There are some countries in the world where it is still illegal to be an atheist, where the penalty for declaring that God does not exist can include a jail sentence or potentially even the death penalty. This is clearly an issue that atheist movements should address, both within their own country and looking outward at the rest of the world. And finally, and I would suggest perhaps most importantly, it's about going out there and selling atheism, not to convert people, but to people out there, especially in countries like the United States, where a lot of religious people, I would propose, have a very negative understanding of atheists and atheism, have a lot of unwarranted misconceptions that there is no meta-ethical basis upon which to have an acceptable moral code if you haven't got a God telling you what to do. And so they are genuinely, some of them, quite concerned, worried about atheism and that what the spread of atheism could entail within their societies. And I think it's very important that atheist movements get out there and say, actually, you can be a good person and be an atheist. And there's actually quite a diversity of good people that have very different political opinions, that have very different moral opinions, but still subscribe firmly to the underpinning moral bases that we all share, that you shouldn't go around murdering and stealing and raping and beating people to a pulp. We all share these things, and that there are firm grounds upon which an atheist can hang their moral hat and still hold these positions. So those are the three things. Support atheists, go out there and sell atheism and deal with those issues that pertain to atheists generally within your society. Increase diversity by all means, but make sure that includes diversity of thought amongst atheists rather than narrowing that focus. If that's what you do with your atheist movement, then I could not be further behind the work that you are doing. It seems tragic that some people in atheist movements want to do the diametric opposite of most of those things. I think that's all I pretty much wanted to get across in this video. I thank you very much for watching, and bye for now.